Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science. We are still in the intermediate PICO Tech series. The discussion today will be on beacons. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is the 1st of March of 2026, and this is part of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. So we see the challenges ahead of us as we try to bring together in a practical application in public study on how we can deliver this knowledge. And at the same time, we see the long road behind us. And this is not something that we have to drag along. This is something that is supporting our progress as we build and build on our knowledge. And this is all recorded for posterity. And each of us can take what we need, and each of us can deliver more of what we understand. And that is where the secret lies. We need to stay within our own capability and make sure that we are doing and fulfilling our responsibility. Yes, it is a responsibility because we are in part of the matter plasma dimension. And this subject keeps coming up because this is a unique and special opportunity that we have, where we have this plasmatic situation where we can't touch it or see it, but our reality is the physical matter state where we can touch and we can't see. And we need to understand that both of these are active at all times. So we've been trying to think outside of the box, and that box has pinned it down into old science and those traditional ways that confirm how we've been doing things in a time-honored way that keeps us from advancing. And as we went into the nanotechnology, and now we're discussing the PICO technology, this is all part of the advancements in the GAN's technology, and it's all part of the advancements of the plasma science. So the plasma science, as we know it, is advancing faster than what we're keeping up with here on this public forum, and rightfully so, because as we gain more knowledge, we gain more depth of understanding, and that is really where the key is. So today we're going to be discussing some basics about energy. We know that energy comes as in a parcel. It's an energy pack. But when we pack it up in a parcel, like on this planet, we depend on water. And water is made of hydrogen and oxygen, but fundamentally the hydrogen is atomic weight of 1 and oxygen is a weight of 8. And so it's hard to understand how this is balanced in what we call a maggraph. And when we say balanced, it is actually a round drop of water. And that is the point. But that point can split up into 2 points. And that is done through electron shearing. So where the hydrogen now is becoming that positive energy that is being delivered, and the hydroxyl, which is left behind, is now seeking another partner. And this is the way that the water is working, the water being the combination of 2 gases, hydrogen and oxygen. So we have gases and we have liquid that's present. And so interesting things when you watch a raindrop, it becomes like a beacon. And from that center point, waves go out and they go out in all directions. And as the waves go out, some go up and some go down. And they have to kind of alternate, don't they? Otherwise, they would always be up, 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 up. And that is not realistic. So when we look at the principal matter and how it comes together, these PM ticks, as they're coming, and they come to that point where they manifest into, say, a raindrop, they have to come together to create this parceling unit, bringing together the antimatter, dark matter, and the matter gen, and converting it and converging into a plasmagen. It is from there that we can convert it into the physicality through field interaction, which we call inertia, with another maggrav, and that being our Earth space. And so that interaction is and was represented in Beijing, May 10th of 2025, where the gold rush began. And we can see how we were creating gold out of thin air. And 2026, yeah, the silver rush has also begun. But as we're starting to understand this better, it is affecting all the elements of the periodic table of elements, because we are discussing the picoatomic state, which is beyond the nanomonatomic state. And when you look at the pico particles, they're like little beacons, and they have all these spikes, and they too push energy out in many different directions. So that is from the microscale. And when we look at the universe, we look at the transmutation highway, which is the macro scale. And so there we are in between on the carbon-12 highway, which we refer to as the transmission highway. But there's a connection, that's the carbon-14 transition highway. And then there's the transmutation highway, which is more powerful even still. And the fact of the matter is that we can enter into these highways with an on-ramp, and we can exit with an off-ramp. But we have choices now. We can go up or we can go down, and we can go from side to side, just as we do on this planet, as we drive maybe on the Karakoram Highway, where we have to drive a crooked mile just to go a straight line. And if we don't, we won't be doing it in safety. So this is part of one form of transmission. But as we see how the zigzag goes back and forth in the magnetical zig and the gravitational zag, you've got the combination. So this is what we say, well, one goes up and one has to come down, or as they say sometimes, so above, so below. And we call these frequencies. And if we look at a sine wave, we just see it in singularity. But if we have multiple sine waves, we can see them in duality. And we can see that there's many points of interaction. And then we can modify them by modulating the wave by increasing its height. Or we can blur the vision by seeing it in duality and coming together from different angles. All of this is basically trying to represent what Marin Tevakoli-Kesh is trying to describe in book number 1, the universal order of creation of matters, where we're bringing together the antimatter, dark matter, and the matter state and it comes together and converges into one point. And that point came from somewhere and goes to somewhere. And that's why book number 2, we talk about the structure of the light. So that light has to go from one point to another point, and therefore the light itself becomes the connection between those 2 points. And then in book number 3, well, here we have the origin of the universe, where that one point splits up into these 2 points. And so, as we said in book number 2, there is a connection between those two. So all what we see is our man's universe, which is our little tiny perfect world. It's not that the man's universe is a tiny perfect world. It's that speck we call Earth space, which is that tiny perfect world. And not even that. It could be our condominium, our little cave in the sky in some building. And we call it modern living, and still ignore our sister universe, which is the rest of the universe. So we find that in the rest of the universe, the members of the Universal Council, along with Rick Crammon, are trying to engage with the rest of the Universal Council for 419 weeks using the One Planet, One Nation, One Race for Justice and World Peace every Tuesday, trying to bring together all the Universal Councils together into a peaceful and harmonious interaction. But here we are on our Earth space, and we are the fallen angels. It comes through falling through weakness. And in that process, scientifically, we increase our density and increase our pressure. And of course, we increase our gravity. But all that is our increased dependence on the Earth space feeding. But there is an internal pressure that comes from the Gans fields. And that pressure not only balances out the angular momentum, because that is conserved, but also balances out the forces that keep us alive. So our failure to understand this duality, we see it as a kind of confrontation where we have duals as duality. And the energy that is manifest comes about generating heat through friction. And then, of course, as our hands come together, we can clench our fists, and that can manifest into fighting. So this is why gentlemen like to shake hands and come out fighting. It's all part of our understanding of the inertia density manifestation as a form of confrontation. And to continue that, of course, we need our commandments to tell us how to do things. And in addition to the 10 commandments, we have an additional 14 commandments. And number 11 says, thou shalt not lie. Do you need a commandment to tell you not to lie? Or do you lie? Because in the universe, not doesn't work. You can't not do something. You can only do something. So when you say thou shalt not lie, what you're really saying is thou shalt lie. And so we've gotten into this energy bind of self-serving requirements. That's our personal dimension point, me, myself, and I, and that's our focus point as we bring together all this energy. Unfortunately, we rely on it at the expense of others. And how we do this is ranging from everything from just emotional abuse to physical abuse. And it all stems from lying, cheating, stealing, and killing. And in that way, this energy that we need diminishes. And so we're bringing together the Universal Body Enhancement Spaceship units to give you the vitality enhancement that you need with both your emotional and physical sustenance. And this is something that is important to do for supplementation. But if you are continuing to leak as a loose leaker, then you have continual demands on supplementation. So it's a two-step process. Stop the leaking and start the supplementation. And so we can bring together more of what we need. This coming together is that transaction zone. So that singularity requires a solo effort, but the duality requires a partnership. And that partnership requires reciprocity, which means balance of incentives. So how do we achieve a balance of incentives without achieving a confrontation? Not understanding the plasma rule, where the higher strength feeds the weaker strength, is where the problem sits. We're used to where the higher strength beats the weaker strength, or the higher strength eats the weaker strength, or the higher strength attacks the weaker strength. Bullies like to be bullies. And when we go into that transaction zone, we get this conflict point. That conflict point is a binding zone because it brings two conflicting thoughts, two conflicting armies, two conflicting policies. And that becomes more dense. And that's also part of the inertia density manifestation. And that's how we build our dimensions. We start with that point, and then we add another, and we connect the two. So do we understand how to build dimensions? And do we understand the surface to volume ratios that help us to understand what is the negative charge, what is the positive charge, what is the giver, what is the taker? And when we look at two dimensions, then we have to understand that when we change our approach, shall we say, implement a wave, we have created another point of conflict. And we bring together that negative and positive charge, which is the fundamental structure of water. Isn't that how it all comes together? And then the water becomes even more dense, and they tell us, well, the blood is thicker than water. And so here we are, we're calling all the brothers to unite. And yet, if we're all brothers, how come we have conflicts with brother versus brother? And this is all based on the beacon of lies. And so if we believe that, then that's what we get. We get this conflict. And it comes together as an inertia point. That becomes more dense. The opposite of that is elevation, where we take that position of choice and elevate ourselves into a different emotion of position. So from a position of gravitational stability, we can deliver magnetical stability. And that becomes part of the new beacon that we're looking for. So we may ask, for whom the bell tolls? And this is often referred to because it's a novel by Ernest Hemingway, published in 1940. It tells the story of Robert Jordan, a young American volunteer attached to the Republican guerrilla unit during the Spanish Civil War. And the true phrase is, if a cloud be washed away by the sea, Europe is less. As well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. So our humanity, civilization, is like a beacon. But it's not one beacon. We have 7 civilizations and all tell the same story of the post-flood era. And yet we are in continual contention. But that contention has a dependency. You can't contend by yourself. So you have to have a conflict. And so we bring together different nations, if you will, as civilizations, and then further subdivided into nations with political and geographic boundaries and ideologies. So this is another kind of beacon where we have these nanocharges represented on a grand scale. And so there's a beacon charge, but there's also a beacon discharge. Because the beacon continues to deliver. It isn't static. It doesn't just stay there. It continually moves. And this is what we have with the nanocoating process. When we have this nano alignment, we take this monatomic structure of the copper wire and come up with a nanocoating that's made of carbon. And that in a nanocrystal, as once it gets aligned, allows for continuous flow. And so when we say there's a continuous flow, there's always a charge and there's a discharge, and there's an upness and a downness, and the wave goes. And that's just on one layer. And then when you have the nanomonatomic layers nesting on top of each other, in between you get these nano gaps. And so that becomes the beginning of the star formation structure. And if you look at a tetrahedron and describe it with the two index fingers, point them together and rotate one hand 90 degrees and link up the tips of the fingers, you see the star formation and you see the orientation. You have the gravitational base and the magnetical tip. And so we have a direction, and this is always, in fact, everything has this format. So when we made the first reactors, the obsolete technology using rotating balls, each ball with its GANs had a field around it, but they all kind of worked together. And we saw that in Beijing. We set up not only the rotating balls on each platform, but we had pairs of rotating balls. So we went from singularity to duality. And in that process, we had a dynamic reaction as all the fields interacted. And so we have this coming together of these nanostars through these nano layers, and they create a superconductor at room temperature. And the difference between the animate and the inanimate is more than 3 in a chain is a polymer. So each star is like a fragment of the complexity. It has its nuclear feeding inertia. It has its gravitational stability and also its dimensional portability. And the coming together of the three fields, 1 + 1 + 1, is more than 3, because you still maintain the 1 + 1 + 1. And now you have the solution and the product, but it continues to add to it. And as we continue to add, we start to understand our plasma matter dilemma. Because when we see our atomic state and our nano state and our GAN state, and each of them in balance, and each being able to get this energy transfer in between, but we see that the continual deliverance of the 1 + 1 + 1 is the plasma state. And this plasma state is part of the matter state. It supports the physical state. So the physical state cannot exist without that. So each of the contributing fragments show you a clue of how things are either converging or how things are diverging. And there's always the two sides to it. And so you see that there's always an interaction as you continue. And the convergence being the gravitational and the divergence being the magnetical. So when we look at the subject of, for instance, gene modification, the adaptation to this understanding is confused. There's a disruption, or it's an alteration. Is it enduring, or is it reversible? Well, remember, we're talking about the physical state, the inertia state. So we are talking about the product in the matter state that comes together from the physical, supported by the plasmatic. And we see this in our fatty acids. So here we have a saturated fatty acid with a water-soluble end and an oil-soluble end. And the connecting carbons form a direct line, and they're balanced with the hydrogens on each side. So it forms a straight line. But if we give, like the water does, give off the hydrogen, we create a bend. And that leads us to the alpha-linolenic acid, which is actually slightly alkaline. We call it omega-3, 6, and 9. And in that process, we produce oxygen. And when we get three of them to come together, we produce water. And so this is the functionality that happens within our cells. And so our cells, each of our cells become a beacon where we have this gravitational core sending out a message magnetically, what it is with respect to everything else. And so each cell in our body is part of the whole. It's part of the fragment. So this is the beacon of life. Where we see the up and down, we see the wave motion, and we see how the energy has to flow. There's a connection, there's an emission, and that's all part of the communication. So this is the beacon of truth that comes from our RNA combination with the DNA that comes together with the hydrogen energy. This is the transmission reality. The only reason we can see the hydrogen is we see the emission spectrum in color. And that is our reference, a beacon of light. And that light always shows what it is. But it isn't what it is. It is a representation of what it is. That's the reality. And so we are the interpretation of that reality. We are the beacon of consciousness. Because we are able to, when the omega-3, 6, 9 amino acid folds over, we create the cells, we create the protein, we create the water, we create the physicality. And that physicality becomes the carrier of the consciousness that we have that is supported by the unconsciousness of the plasma reality. And we exist in this beacon of matter state where we have this transmission of reality laid out in front of us, where the emission from the sun has created all the planets. And that is the reality, isn't it? And so this is all balance. This is all part of the plasma matter dilemma that we've been trying to say. So all of this equalness is really a gravitational stability. That is the plus sign. The magnetical stability, that is the negative sign. And it allows us to transfer from state to state or from one side of a state to another side. But there's always this balance. And so it's reflected in our emission of intention. That is our beacon that shows the launch point where we exist to the target point of what we give our time and attention to. And then we get the feedback, which is another launch point coming to us. And then we become that target point. And that is the plasma interaction that is part of the plasmatic fields. And so we see that when we did the Gans of Souls, we brought the cups of life together and the products of the cups of life. We brought the cup of emotion along with another cup of emotion, and we created the Gans of the Gans as a cup of emotion. And we did the same with the cup of physicality. We brought one cup with another cup, and we created the Gans of the Gans to the cup of physicality. And that created another transaction zone right at its PICO core. And that is the fundamental diagram of the nucleus of the cells, which created our humanity, which created our gravitational stability. And so you are a gravitational entity traveling in a magnetical field. And this is what we have to understand. And our connection with the universe is not a reflection, and it's not a symmetry. It's a balance of incentives. We have the copper GANs representing our physicality and the zinc GANs representing our emotional state. But we also have the carbogen representing the interaction with the rest of the universe. And the language is love, because the language of love is not something that you can grab onto. It is an inherent communication that comes about. And so when we look at our existence, we're still in the process of pioneering America. And we see, we don't understand that that's a reflection or an illusion. And that love, we don't seem to understand it as it's put forward by Aphrodite, a Greek goddess. So our understanding needs to have more clarity. And the rule is that what we see in the matter state is coming together from 3 dimensions, supported by a plasma reality. That plasma reality in turn is supported by its plasma reality. So this is why we have these multiple turning points, because that's what creates the stability, the equilibrium that we get from the cosmic rays. It isn't just a one that can either be absorbed or bounce off, but there has to be a gravitational substructure, a coming together of all the fields, and then the interaction of all the fields. So that complexity gives us the stability, and that's what we're seeing when we create this plasma. We get these star formations where we have one connected to another. Each of these star formations becomes a transaction zone, and all the connections of the plasma state coming in different flavors, coming together, and we sort it out and pick and choose what we need in our gravitational PICO core. And all of us have selected the creation of life using carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen to maintain this structure within our structure. So we are all brothers come together. So if we understand that concept, why can't we understand that the earth was made the same way? It isn't just susceptibility and singularity, but it's a susceptibility and duality, because we need an external input of the Gans field of humanity. Turn that dust into gold. You get to choose what you need for that gold. And it's everlasting. It's bountiful. Because there's always a counterweight. So if we're focused on the physical state, then everything weighs on us. If we look at the atomic state, that weight becomes mass. But this is only the gravitational component. Now, when we look at the nuclear state, we measure that in Teslas. That's magnetical. But the plasma state is the missing ingredient to balance off this counterweight. And that's our time on this planet, where we get to learn about life and progress from there. And the only way that we can do that is when we have these things in proper balance, when we measure and scale what we need. Well, what we need is this emotional plasma that comes together and balances out. And two plasma fields coming together of different flavors, depending on that selection process, creates that dimension point. That's your transaction zone, coming together of your ganses, coming together of the magnetical and gravitational fields. And of course, on this planet, we have the conformation with the oxygen, and it has its own color, its own emission spectrum that represents what it is. It isn't what it is, it's only what we see. But what it is that plasmatic decay to GANs, where GANs can decay from gas to liquid to solid. Oxygen is a non-visible gas, but it is a visible liquid, and it is a visible solid. And that's part of the supplementation on this planet, but we need more due to consumption. And this consumption is part of our acquired knowledge. It was conditional teaching by ancient teachers, but they've left things out because there's an unconditional teaching by the Creator that supplements this additional 20% that complements our new awareness, so that we can cross that historical threshold between the cosmic feeding and the loosh harvesting. So we are heading into uncharted territory because we are part of that herd at the turning point, or see the many stars beyond the nanomonatomic state. But we're all covering that range from decay to radiation. There's an upness and a downness, and that AI is our ancestral intelligence that shows that we are the technology and we are the inertia product. We are the image of our dimensional convergence point. So in understanding this energy portability, it all has to do with this energy state transition. Elevation means the physical matter state to energy state. Inertia means the energy state to the physical matter state. So the elevation involves expansion. The only way that we can expand is when we understand and see clearly that we are not alone. It isn't just me, myself, and I. Those are not the three I. For 631 knowledge seekers workshops, we've been seeking the greater oneness to transcend suddenly the limitations of nuclear science, which are patently obvious. And so the cosmic ray transmission continues. You can join us monthly for these sessions. Next one's coming up in the month of March. You're welcome. And also, you're welcome to join the research teams where we can convert diamonds to gold or silver. That's the PICO core of truth. So we can bring peace and prosperity to this planet. So we understand how we can facilitate a scientific rescue by opening the blinds, one nation network at a time. That time is now. We can see how the frequencies of life are embedded within us. and how they reflect and how they manifest. But we also see that huge gap, that abyss, that crossover point, that threshold where we refuse to cross that line. That line is our beacon of hope, the peace dome, where we give and take. But where do we do that? We follow leaders. Well, who does the leader follow? We choose our source of inspiration. What is that? That is the mission of the universal community, and we are part of that community. Our mission is to bring peace on earth and join humanity with the universal community. We want to bring man as equal to all the beings in the universe by teaching the plasma science and technology equally to everyone, that no one is left out and no one is abused due to lack of knowledge. So help us achieve this goal. Sign that World Peace Treaty. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science, welcoming all the beautiful plasma travelers of the carbon nations, learning about the new frequencies of the new organic plasma science. That World Peace Treaty is something not only you should choose it, but you should sign it unconditionally and mean it sincerely. The point of the true PICO tech is the polyatomic core manifestation. The overlapping ribbons of Earth space create the peace dome. Is the inertia of the present governed by dimensions of history? Or is it time to learn the history of self in a universal context? The PICO state silently explodes as a peaceful superconductor. And that emission carries the beacons of hope that carry the emotional strength that transcends the matter, plasma, and universal state. So the plasma science needs to continue to be enhanced daily via that peace dome in a practical exchange for peace on earth. We keep repeating ourselves because we want to welcome you to the new golden outer space age. Thank you for letting me present. I hope you enjoyed the trip.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Very good. And let's see if any of the participants have any questions they'd like to raise or points they'd like to bring us or share, fields, if possible. I know we were talking about delivering the knowledge, but perhaps we're going to deliver this tapping in idea rather than the actual knowledge, that everybody can tap into what they need. That way they teach themselves. There must be a technique in a way to tapping in some finer points that we haven't understood. But if we can, rather than teach the knowledge, if we can teach people to tap in, all the knowledge apparently is there. We just need to tap in. So this may be a way of teaching, not per se the knowledge, but the way that you can tap into this knowledge of whatever you'd like to tap into. Not the way I want to teach it, let's say. So this will be a bigger freedom part of it. I'm just making a statement. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that, but perhaps this will save a bit of energy if we can teach others how to tap in rather than teach them the knowledge. As we understand it, and as I understand it, we haven't understood quite a lot of it. But this tapping in process may bring a more thorough understanding. Just a comment. Anyone else have a thought or a question? Alex, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think the message with the beacon, and it comes from not only the teachings of Mr. Keshe, but it's used in the game of plasma. the gaming community has turned into very much a lost generation. Not only are they not participating in, as useful functionaries, but they're breeding a mental aspect of war games and extreme competition, and being desensitized to the fact that, death and dying are, perfectly normal and perfectly okay. And of course, what they're doing is cultivating a lack of compassion. And I think this is the message that we have to understand. So not only are we trying to bring peace and prosperity, but you have to understand that the lack is part of the thing that creates a conflict, whether it be a lack of energy, being a lack of food, or anything else that you choose. The game of peace, the game of plasma, is demonstrating in a practical aspect of it. And so there are limitations to our participation on that game. We can only travel to 100 places in 24 hours. So this is contrary to what so many gamers are doing 12 to 18 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day, foregoing their health, foregoing their diets, foregoing their socializing with the rest. To them, their war games are their social world. So by practical applications, we may become better teachers, but we're also providing a fundamental thing here where we are emphasizing patience, emphasizing our education. We learn about the countries we go to. We learn something about the countries themselves. We see their proximity on the planet. And as we repeat and repeat and repeat, our knowledge becomes part of our common language. And we start to see how small our planet really is. And how when brothers are called to arms, which brothers are you referring to? Because we're all brothers. So, the convenient truth is that the war games are fun. But the real truth is that peace and prosperity is more fun. As the famous quote from Pearl Bailey said, "I've been rich and I've been poor. Rich is better." Back to you, Mark.
Okay, perhaps I'll just show the game that you're referring to. This is the biggest gift Mr. Kesh said he could give humanity right at Christmas time. You can take the screen back, but there's some basic rules in here, or sort of an overview. There's a couple of pop out, and it takes a little bit of, here's a manual right here, which kind of explains a little bit about the game, but there's much more. Of course, the game is in its infancy. But as I said earlier, as you play this game, the ethos of the Kesh Foundation, which is again the gift of the three wise men, which all the Christians missed, was the idea. So this ethos sinks in as you play this game, the idea of thinking, speaking, and acting. And I think this creates quite a shielding for you. As I was thinking, about, I was in the supermarket recently, and the lady was saying how everything has sugar in it and how it's not really good for you. And I was saying, yeah, it's kind of connected, they say, to cancer and everything else. But I should have talked to them about how important the emotion is, which I didn't do for whatever reason. But I was going to use the example of that blood pressure, how if you have something bothering you and maybe your neighbor has done something or your coworker and it's just gnawing at you, and you go to the doctor and they take your blood pressure and they say, gee, your blood pressure is rather elevated at this point in time. And the person says, well, I don't know why. I'm eating the right diet. But these emotions can drastically affect your pressure. And I don't think a lot of people consider that. So the idea of thinking and just shows you how we can control so many things through the emotion, even though we're not even fully aware of it. Because most people wouldn't think that anger at my coworker or my boss or something that happened would actually carry over into the physicality, but it does. And then, of course, the doctor said, well, maybe you need some tablets to handle this. It's been elevated for a couple of months now, and you might want to consider some tablets, but never discuss the emotion that's bothering the person, which actually is raising their blood pressure. So just another example how the emotions can affect the physicality, and probably creating that carbon 14, which we're not even aware of, as we heard in that opening video. Can create materials, but it also can create other things. If you'd like to take the screen back, Alex, please do so. Just thought I'd share the game, unless somebody wants to bring up something about the game. But this is the alternative of the One Nation network that we talk about. And there's a program on Tuesday called One Planet, One Nation, One Race for World Peace. And this is actually the virtual system of that One Nation. We see an association is being set up. Perhaps I'll put that in the chat as well. cashfoundation.at, where you can become for €1 per year a member of an association, which is all tied into this. As he said, the cosmic ray material, the Ubiso system, the Mark Ray Corporation, the Cash Coin, many, many things. And this is all tied to making life less harsh for people on this planet, as we'll start to see millions and then perhaps billions of us bring ourselves out of poverty. And of course, it may not be so much the poverty of the physicality, even though that strongly exists, but the poverty of the lack of knowledge, lack of universal knowledge. And I think that's what the enlightenment part is about. Any comments on the game, or anyone want to say anything? Is it difficult to play? Is it creating peace and balance within you? Again, this is where some energies and some, as I said earlier, those little resources that are pulsing, I think that gives you a signal in a way that this game is being pulsed, although he's just showing that as a pulsation, but he said he would pulse the fields of peace and love and kindness through this network. And of course, the game is part of the One Nation network.
Yeah, Mark, that cache destination, could you post it, please? Because I think we need to
Cache destination.
the one for becoming a member.
Oh yes, I'll type that in the chat now. Thank you, Alex. This is an association, and as we've heard from someone who was in Germany, I wasn't aware of it, but people that went through the energy or the COVID idea that were members of an association actually had more privileges than the general population. If you were a member of the association, they couldn't they couldn't stop you from meeting together because you're part of a club or an association. And that's why I think Mr. Kesh is setting this up within the structure of this sort of game, in a way, that there is a marketplace and some other things in here which will come. Whoops, let me just go back to the map, sorry. If we go to the, I think you're sharing the screen, or am I, Alex? Yeah.
No, take the screen back, Mark, please.
Yeah, just to share quickly here. Again, it's only in its infancy. This is just the beta version, so it hasn't even come in to play, so to speak, in full. And that will be around the March 21st time. So this is all virtual in a way. And the cash coin is only something that is used within the foundation of the cash structure at this point in time until it's accepted outside of the cash structure, which again, we don't know exactly how long that'll be. So yes, the world has gotten smaller. I'm quite a bit more comfortable with different places, especially when I hear of people talking about Bhutan or Malawi or Bangladesh or China. I could recognize in the past, but certainly the world has gotten smaller for me in a way. And of course, the transmutation is the preferred way to move in this game, where you arrive instantaneous. Maybe the Universal, some of the ones in the UFO will start playing this game and tap into the way the creator moves without a craft or without a vehicle, in a way just instantaneous, whether it's from one side of the planet to the other or from one side of a universe to the other. And this is the transmutation process we're learning through this game, perhaps. Any questions about this game, or did I miss something? So the marketplace is here. Again, I don't understand all of this, but things will be able to be traded. And that's because you're part of an association. If taxes need to be paid, they'll be paid. The operation of the game will take a percentage. If we go to the Cash Foundation store, we can see that you will need a wallet to collect your resources or coins or what have you. And this is, at this point in time, it appears to be 99 euro plus the value added tax. You don't actually need a One Nation network, but if you can, this is a beautiful gift that you can actually gift to humanity. As he said, the units don't really belong to us in a way. It's a gift to humanity. And neither does the knowledge, as he said. So, Alex, how low is low? When Mr. Kesh was talking about this, how low does the creation process start? We know it obviously is beyond PICO. This is what he was showing in Beijing, that the creation starts from the small and builds up to the matter state. But how low is low? I think that was the question. You used to ask how large is large. Now, Mr.
Yeah, I used to ask how big is large, but how low is a really, really good question. And actually, I'm progressing very slowly to in this discussion in this particular series to talk about that. But one thing you have to understand is that you standing on the ground, you are feet on the ground, not on the ceiling. If you dig a hole, you jump into the hole, feet will be on the ground, not in the sky. If you dig a deeper hole, you can jump down, you'll still be on the ground. If you're a miner, you go down, you'll still be going down. Now, you're on one side of the planet. If you have someone on the other side of the planet doing the same thing, imagine, if you will, that the two of you keep digging a hole and coming towards the center of the earth. Who's got their feet on the ground and who's got their head in the sky? You see the problem there?
No, I think I'm missing that one.
Well, I think basically if I drill down and go right to the center of the earth and I'm always standing on the ground,
Okay.
and someone is coming from the other direction, they're also standing on the ground. It's like saying, oh, well, here we are in North America, we are, right side up, and down in South America, they're upside down. Isn't that what we always call Australians, down under? But, everybody's got their feet on the ground. It's just that they're on one side and someone's on the other side. I'm just saying, if we dig down through the center, come to the center of the earth, we'll come, our feet will touch. And that, of course, is going to be impossible because now we have our feet on the ground and like poles repel. And that's where the dilemma comes in our understanding. So our understanding is incomplete.
Yeah, I've always sort of agreed with that. At least it's growing, but it seems ever so slowly. Perhaps this new tapping into knowledge is one of the keys for all of us to access, because the knowledge is there, isn't it? It's not like it's got to be created, the knowledge, or we're carrying this knowledge. But somehow they're making a pathway for the connection to it that you
Well,
can.
I received a very rude awakening because this knowledge is everywhere, and we have many monuments, archaeological monuments all around the world that basically are talking about a certain kind of history, and we don't really understand it, and that's always been the excuse. And I'm not an archaeologist, so I can't really challenge anything except to say that I'm miffed that they don't understand it, because that's what they do for a living. They learn, and it isn't just one generation of archaeologists. I mean, our history is full of them. So I just don't understand why we keep saying, well, we don't know. But the awakening that I got was the Royal Archaeological Society is a man's club. Women are not allowed. And of course, being royal, it's part of the, um, shall we say, royal family, or it's authorized by the royal family of England. And then to find out that the Archaeological Society is actually owned by the Vatican, and then all of a sudden I start to understand where the problem sits.
Yeah, so much has been whitewashed, as they say, or obfuscated so we can't find certain things, or even hidden within museums that never get brought out. So there's a lot of effort to keep knowledge hidden from, let's say, mankind or humanity.
But what we're trying to do with these classes is allow people to decipher this information on their own. If you understand which way the charge is going, and you understand the coming together of fields, the up and down scale of the transmission cycles, then you can formulate your own understanding. You don't need to be a scientist to figure all this out. You just need to understand how energy is in motion and how energy is always in motion. And then you know, you can hold a battery, but you can't hold that energy. And the only time you can access that energy is when you create that circuit. So you understand what's wrong in your life. You have an analogy with the batteries and with the understanding of energy and their flow. And this is what we have to take comprehensive responsibility. We don't need intermediaries and teachers to teach us. We just need to understand the rules of the game. And the rules of the game are the sun comes up and gives unconditionally. So, which game do you want to play? Thank you all for allowing me to present, and thank you, Mark, for doing a superb job. And I want to thank all the panelists also for making this such an important gathering. And we are the beacon of hope for this planet, that's for sure. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Alex, for hanging in there and being a strong force for enlightening in a way, or sharing your understanding as you see it. Of course, there's no peer review within the Keshe Foundation. That's one of the beautiful things about it. You peer review yourself, and no one judges, or at least we try not to, even though we may think a person is not fully understanding. But it's each for each one of us to pick this up and understand it. So thank you all for your presence and being here. I'm going to play the final disclaimer. The meeting will come to an end. Continue to pray for peace and give through your emotions. This is the solution. Not in the matter state will we find that solution, but we need to create it through the collective awareness. As we raise this collective awareness of the souls that they start to give into this process, we will see the change, because the energy comes before the matter, as we're starting to learn. Anyone else want to add anything else or share any other parts you'd like to share, or something that's your soul is prompting you to share with the others? Feel free.
Yeah, Mark, I have a question about the game.
Take
I'm over in, I guess, level 1, and I went through all the countries. The only thing I can't find is Tuvalu. It's like down in
Okay.
and it won't pop up if that, the bottle will not pop up in there. It's at down by Tahiti, whatever.
Right.
And
I think Dr. Gatwa showed us a way. If this is working, you can go to Travalu. Is that the one you were talking about?
Tuvalu, yeah.
I didn't even know there was a country named Tuvalu.
I know, right? Tuvalu. It's over by Tahiti, way down by Australia, between what is it, Hawaii and
Yeah. So the way you find it, if you need to go there and travel for a country, you bring up that info. This is what I think one of the knowledge seekers shared with us. Is it this one where open 3D?
okay.
So now we see Travalu over here, and we have a choice to travel by airplane or to travel by transmutation. And all I need to do is press this travel button and you'll go there.
But it won't pop up for me. Does that make sense? I can't, it's not there. All the countries that are around there, but not that one.
That's right.
And I don't see the bottle once in a while at all so I can get it, if that makes any sense.
This is, remember, there's many ways to get to Rome, many roads
Yeah.
to Rome. So if you want to get to Travalu, you would go on your screen. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, you see where it says info.
Yes.
Okay, so you click on info, and now all the countries are listed. If there's one you can't find on the map and you want to go there, you simply click on it.
Oh, that's so easy. Look, you can't have that.
Okay, there's a couple steps here. So we found Travalu. So we click on it, and we
Okay.
open 3D, because don't forget there's a 2D map, which is what we were just looking at. Now
Okay.
the 3D map.
Yeah.
Okay, we have the 3D map open. Here's Travalu, and it says it right up here. And we would go down to airplane. If you want to travel by airplane, you could to Travalu, or you could go transmutation, and all you do is click on travel, and you'll be counted as registering as visiting that location.
Okay. Well, okay.
One of the knowledge seekers, because as you said, I mean, if you just pull up the 3D version, it's because of the way it's manipulated on the screen, it's rather hard to find that. This is where you are now. This is where I am. I'm not sure which country or wherever. I'm in Ireland. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's hard to find true value by scrolling this. So the easy way, as I said, is back to the 2D, go to the info, scroll down to the country. Again, this is the third time, but just to run everyone through it. And again, it's kind of hidden by the map. So we would find, here it is.
Yeah, it's traveling. Okay, actually, I think it's going over there just with an airplane, so it's slow.
Yeah, see how
Thank you.
easy things are when you know the knowledge. Of course, I don't know very much knowledge. Mr. Kesh said teaching someone to do something is not enlightenment. So we're just, in a way, sharing what we discovered about the game. And there's a few things I've perhaps discovered. I know MOSFEC has discovered. Each one of us has sort of discovered things. So that's one of the ways to find the country. And what Juan is saying here is he's at level 1, meaning you have to travel to each country twice. And if you go to the same country 5 times, it only still counts as twice. Somehow they moved me to level 5, and I need to visit, I don't know how many times each country, 35 or something like that, to satisfy that level. But I think this idea of traveling to so many places is just to keep your physicality in the game. From minute to minute, you don't have to stay there, but you come back and you pick another location, and keeping your physicality in the game so you can be, in a way, processed, or you can start to absorb some of the energies that are putting in this game through the cosmic ray fields, which were all very soft targets for. Just the way I'm seeing it at this point. And of course, I'm not too many steps up on the ladder, let's so to speak, but we're moving.
And one other thing for that, my consciousness, I was up to 100 and then came back now down to 10. And every time I go to either wisdom or, the other one, the M, it's just gets up to 20%, and that's it. It's not going anywhere, even though I've, like I said, traveled twice through every country. And like I said, I just couldn't find the 2 hours. So now, which I have, I'm going to go a second time, and I should at least upgrade to 3 or 2.
Resources in Truvalia, I had originally thought you had to have a resource there. You just click on it twice and you'll go there. Even
Okay, cool.
anything, it'll still cost you energy or plasma to go there. So your consciousness can be increased by, if you have books of meditation, you just add 1. I'm at 100, but if I was at 90, I would just add 1 book of meditation. It would go to 91, small book.
Okay.
And if you want to increase it, 5. Now, another way to increase certain things by taking the daily quiz will increase your knowledge. Pretty simple questions in a way. Some are not so simple. I don't always get them all right. I don't look them up. I'm just tapping into my own knowledge, or perhaps universal knowledge. They're multiple choice, so anyone could get all of them correct. Even if you knew nothing, you may make the correct guesses. But I'm just taking this out of my own knowledge and background and what I've gleaned, some of the questions. And this adds to your knowledge factor, which is one of the harder things to bring up in the game. And that's why I've been concentrating on the knowledge. Again, you get these books of wisdom, you collect them, whether it's a small, medium, or large, and you can actually gift them to yourself. Here's the books of wisdom, and you can increase your knowledge. I'm trying to get up to the 100%. I don't know if I'll make it by the 21st of March, or even if the game will be finished and released by then, but that's my goal. All the rest seem to come up rather straightforward. Yes, you have to spend time to get your enlightenment up, traveling to the different countries, depending what level you're on, but the knowledge is a very slow progression. But you can bring it up by adding the books of wisdom you've collected, and this will bring your knowledge up. But again, everything is going to change after March 21st. There'll be some major announcements that'll affect the life of all of us, and perhaps this is the time, as Mr. Kesh said, that everyone will receive 1,000 Kesh coins, not to be spent willy-nilly, but to be spent within the structure of the Kesh Foundation at this point in time. It'll be heavily monitored, closely monitored, that you just can't go out and do things with it. So we'll have to use it, but it should be enough to last us 100 years. So we're all going to be millionaires perhaps in the next coming months. Again, virtually, but really a millionaire in the knowledge of the universe is much more precious than a millionaire in the matter state of, let's say, funds or monies. Even though I believe we all have the right to find out for ourselves that it's not that important of having the wealth. Actually, Mr. Kesh is saying the detachment is more important. Not that you have to take all your clothes off and give them to the poor and, put ashes on your head and the rest of this and deny any kind of good living, because Mr. Kesh said he lives a very comfortable life. And of course, the Creator never suffers, or never suffered, or Christ only suffered the time he put they put the nails, the three nails on him. That was the only time, and that only lasted. So this is the whole idea of making the life less harsh, as people will start to perhaps acquire their energy for power, their energy for themselves, wellness, travel, and other things through this virtual game, if we could call it that. So it's going to become quite alive as the energy dimension gets introduced in people. They want to, or a child wants a glass of orange juice. Mother has no money for the orange juice. You will actually receive the energy of that orange juice and probably the emotion or the taste of it as well. And the child will be satisfied. This is what Mr. Kesh did when he went to the world leaders 20 more years ago, 25 years ago, where he said he can show the people on this planet how to feed themselves and generate their own power for little to no cost. And of course, that request was flatly denied. So, and it's coming full circle now around where this is the actual alternative structure as I see it. Again, just to be impartial, only my understanding of our current structure of killing, deceit, wars, and the rest of it. So we have a system of peace and enlightenment, if you can tune into it, I suppose.
Mark, I have a couple of comments I'd like to make.
Please.
The game itself is a very interesting, bringing together kind of the idea of a casino and bingo cards as they come together. It's very important as you go through the various levels, that you get all the countries visited so that you can move up to the next level, and run them uniformly. But the two main comments that I really wanted to make has to do with this educational aspect of the game. This reminded me when I was in public school, and I mean, I was in grade 4, and the teacher asked us to do a project, and I got the chance to do something about South America. So I thought, well, talking about it with my mother, and she helped me out, and we decided to do a map of South America. We took a Bristol board, and we actually took paper mache and literally created a topographical map of South America, including the mountains and everything. And then I painted it. And in that process, I learned about all the countries, and I learned about all their capitals. And it's the only continent that I'm really good at. You know, in fact, it's just embarrassing how poor I am with Central America and even Europe, and
Yeah.
forget about the rest of the world. So what I'm saying is that if kids were playing this game instead of playing their war games on Xbox or whatever, if they play this game, the worst thing that could happen is that they would know the names of all the countries and know the capitals of all the countries and know, where they are. And what an educational tool, because they're just not getting that in schools today. They have this comedy on YouTube where they're doing surveys in the street, and they're asking people to name 3 countries, and they don't know the difference between a city and a puddle, and it's funny, but it's not funny. It's just the lack of education, you know. So, and that's because our school system has been geared to attendance as opposed to graduation. The school system gets paid according to the number of students that attend, not according to their academic achievements. The second thing that I want to mention is Karina has put something in the chat here, and it's very interesting. The configuration. We have the arms, the hands coming together above the hearts, and the hands would be magnetical and the hearts would be gravitational, and then she has the other connection with the beacon. I'm tending to believe that this was done on purpose. It's a beautiful picture done with the what do you call it, the little symbols there.
Yeah.
And I just want to comment on how it actually is representing a picture of what we've been trying to talk about. So thank you very much, Karina, for that. And thank you, Mark, and all the other panelists. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Well, thank you as well, Alex, and thank you, Karina, for confirming for Alex in a way, and yourself, maybe with you knowing or maybe without you knowing. As the soul, nothing is hidden from the soul of the man or woman. Any other thoughts or comments? Again, a much bigger structure is being set up for all of us, but in the meantime, we'll still have to go to do whatever you've been doing in the matter state until we can fully transition. But I think, Alex, that he will start to, as we start to move across this planet, and I mean really transmute, again, as he's often said, you can go from New York to Beijing in 5 minutes. So I think we'll start moving across this planet first, and then perhaps the solar system. Perhaps there'll be something added to this game where we can start to move in that energy dimension around and become much more familiar with the moons and the different planets. And again, an understanding of how we move between these structures in the energy dimension, or perhaps in the UFO as well. As Mr. Kesh said, there's a lot of system failures potentially in many of these UFO systems. But I think we'll still be learning from members of the universal community, as we see on the workshop here, what Rick has brought up. As Mr. Kesh said, it'll take more than all of us to on this planet to open up this knowledge. And I see a couple of entities here that don't seem to necessarily come from this planet. Maybe none of us have come from this planet. But as he said, they will share the advanced flying matter state craft, and we will share with more of the universal community, not all of them, because some of them already know, the understanding of the transmutation. Some of these beings, entities, have never taken on the dimension of matter state, but some of them have, and they're flying in craft. And of course, as we know, the Creator doesn't use a craft to move, he transmutes, and this is part of this whole process. And even the ones from afar, if they understood the way the Creator moves, they certainly wouldn't be boarding a physical craft to move their soul and physicality across the universe, which is a pretty slow process, even though it's quite fast, as we saw with the 3I and that biological entity that came in, quite fast. But at the same time, it took 3 months just to go around the sun, where we can move across the universe in nanoseconds or a few seconds, if we understand this process of transmutation. And it also gives us an aspect of immortality, where we can play off the energy dimension against the matter state if we learn how to play, or tap into that knowledge. As he said, it's all about now tapping into, rather than teaching, in a way where we teach ourselves through these systems.